My name is Mary Williams, and if you want to hear more stories from older people, subscribe to the channel Her Voice Tales, and let me know where you are listening from. Here's a reimagined version of your story, adhering to the character count and incorporating new names while maintaining the narrative flow. The gavel's sharp rap echoed through the sterile confines of the law office, a sound as jarring as the pronouncement that followed. My father-in-law bequeathed us 7 magnificent villas in Key West. Serena's voice, a triumphant clarion, sliced through the hushed reverence. Her perfectly manicured hands clutched the hefty deed papers like a miser hoarding gold. Alara, darling, what a pity. You merely inherited the antiquated storage facility in Louisiana. A ripple of applause erupted, a tide of obsequious murmurs from relatives I barely recognized, distant cousins, long-lost aunts, and Uncle Mortimer, a man who'd sponged off my ex-husband, Silas, for decades without a whisper of repayment. They clapped for Serena as if she'd just claimed the grand prize in a lottery, which, in their self-serving minds, she had. I sat in the plush leather armchair, my work-roughened hands folded in my lap, observing my former daughter-in-law's performance. At 35, Serena exuded an aura of effortless entitlement. Her blonde hair, meticulously styled, framed a face devoid of genuine emotion. Her designer gown, no doubt costing more than a year of my meager consulting fees, shimmered under the office lights. 7 opulent villas, she continued, her voice practically purring, as she held up her phone for a selfie with the coveted deeds. Oceanfront properties, private docks, helipads. Can you even fathom such luxury? More sycophantic applause, more congratulatory exclamations, all directed at the woman who, for the past 4 years, had treated me like an embarrassing relic, an unwanted guest at every family gathering. Mr. Finch, the estate attorney, cleared his throat with a practiced diplomatic cough. Mrs. Holloway, if we could proceed with the remaining provisions of the will. Oh, certainly, Mr. Finch, Serena chirped, not bothering to lower her voice or temper her unbridled glee. My apologies, Alara. I simply couldn't contain my excitement about our inheritance. I realize this must be trying for you. Trying? As if witnessing my ex-husband's family revel in my supposed destitution was merely an inconvenience, rather than a public spectacle of humiliation. My gaze drifted across the polished mahogany table to my son, Marcus, 40 years old, rigid as a statue carved from equal parts embarrassment and cowardice. His dark hair, so like his father's, was impeccably groomed, his expensive suit tailored to conceal the softness that came from a lifetime of never having to toil. He wouldn't meet my eyes, preferring to scrutinize his own hands as his wife orchestrated her solo act of inherited grandeur. Marcus, I said softly, my voice cutting through Serena's ceaseless self-congratulation. You're remarkably quiet. He finally looked up, and in his eyes, I saw something that twisted my gut. Not grief for his father, not concern for my feelings, but shame. Shame that his mother had received what everyone in the room undoubtedly considered the paltry consolation prize. Mom, he began, his voice trailing off as he glanced nervously at Serena, as if seeking tacit permission to speak. Marcus is simply overwhelmed, Serena interjected smoothly, reclaiming the spotlight as she glided back into her chair. 7 properties are a tremendous responsibility. We'll undoubtedly need to engage a property management firm. Perhaps acquire a yacht to ferry us between them all. Uncle Mortimer guffawed loudly. Serena, you simply must invite us to the housewarming galas. All 7 of them. Of course, she responded, her smile oozing faint sympathy as she turned to me. We are contemplating hosting the first next month. A grand celebration of Silas's enduring legacy. Alara, you're absolutely welcome to attend. I know the storage facility isn't much, but perhaps you could transform it into something practical. A workshop, perhaps? You always were so resourceful. Resourceful. The word she deployed when she meant poor. When she meant beneath her notice. When she meant someone who fixes things rather than acquiring new ones. I reached into my well-worn leather satchel and extracted the envelope containing my inheritance documents, the deed to a 40,000 square foot storage facility in Shreveport, Louisiana. The very building where Silas and I had spent countless weekends during our marriage, back when I was still trying to fathom his inexplicable insistence on acquiring property in such an unremarkable locale. A storage facility, Cousin Bethany whispered, her pity thinly veiled. Well, Alara, at least you'll have ample space to store your belongings. More insipid laughter, more saccharine expressions of sympathy from people who had never offered genuine compassion when it might have been truly meaningful. I rose slowly, my joints protesting after 2 hours of legal jargon and familial dramatics. The room fell silent, everyone's gaze fixed on me with the morbid curiosity typically reserved for roadside accidents. Mr. Finch, I addressed the attorney directly, is there anything further I need to sign? No, Mrs. Holloway. Your inheritance is quite straightforward. The storage facility, the encompassing 40 acres, and all subsurface mineral rights are transferred to you, free and clear. Mineral rights. I noted the phrase sailed completely over everyone's heads, including Serena's. She was too engrossed in mentally redecorating her Key West villas to pay heed to such pedestrian legal technicalities. I tucked the documents back into my satchel, the same one I'd carried for 15 years, because it was durably constructed and served its purpose admirably. Unlike some things I'd learned, true quality endured far longer than superficial flash. Well, I said, surveying the faces flushed with vicarious excitement over Serena's impending windfall. Congratulations to all. I trust you'll enjoy your good fortune. I turned towards the door, then paused, my hand on the cool metal handle. Marcus was finally looking at me, his expression a convoluted blend of guilt and something that might have been dawning concern. Son, I said quietly, my voice carrying clearly in the suddenly silent room. You truly don't know, do you? The temperature in the room seemed to plummet 10 degrees. Serena's triumphant smile solidified, like ice crystallizing on a window pane. Don't know what? She demanded, her voice an octave higher than usual. I looked at my son, the man I had raised and loved, and inwardly braced myself for a world more intricate than inherited wealth and Key West real estate. A world where appearances could be utterly deceptive. Where the most valuable assets weren't always the most obvious. Where a dilapidated storage facility in Louisiana might, in fact, be worth more than 7 sprawling villas in Florida. Don't know what, Mom? Marcus echoed, finally finding his voice. I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd managed since Silas's funeral 3 weeks prior. Not a joyous smile, precisely, but the knowing expression of someone privy to a truth everyone else was about to learn the hard way. Nothing, darling. Nothing at all. I opened the door and stepped out of the law office, leaving behind a room brimming with people convinced they understood precisely what Silas Holloway's final wishes had wrought. Behind me, I could hear Serena's voice escalating, demanding answers to questions she hadn't yet learned how to formulate. Let them celebrate their Key West villas, I mused as I walked towards my 15-year-old Honda Civic. Let them plan their yacht excursions and their property management companies and their Instagram narratives of inherited luxury. Silas had always possessed a shrewdness none of them had ever fully grasped. And in 45 minutes, safely ensconced in my modest apartment, I would finally open the sealed letter he had entrusted to me, the one Mr. Finch had handed me along with the storage facility deed. The letter that would meticulously delineate why my ex-husband had chosen to grant his avaricious family precisely what they believed they desired, while bestowing upon me exactly what I truly needed. Some legacies, I was learning, were far more intricately designed than they appeared, and some storage facilities in Louisiana held greater value than 7 villas in Key West. But that, I decided, was a lesson for another day. Today, I simply yearned to return home and decipher a dead man's final words to the woman who had loved him long enough to comprehend that his most profound act of love might, to all others, resemble abandonment. The drive home from the attorney's office blurred into a hazy tapestry of Memphis traffic and tumultuous thoughts. My hands gripped the steering wheel of my trusty Honda Civic, 15 years old, yet meticulously maintained, much like every other facet of my life since the divorce, while Serena's triumphant cackle reverberated in my memory, an abrasive scraping of fingernails on a chalkboard. 7 villas in Key West. The words had been delivered with a vindictive glee usually reserved for lottery winners, reveling in their fortune before a crowd of envious, ticketless onlookers. I pulled into the parking lot of Riverbend Gardens, the unassuming apartment complex I'd called home for the past 4 years. Not because I couldn't afford grander accommodations, but because I had, over time, learned to prize substance over superficiality, utility over ostentation. My 2-bedroom unit on the 3rd floor offered everything I required: solid construction, reliable plumbing, and neighbors who respectfully kept to themselves. Mrs. Periwinkle from 3B was meticulously watering her balcony plants as I ascended the exterior stairs, offering a friendly wave, the casual acknowledgement of someone who knew me as the quiet woman in 3C, always punctual with her rent, never one to complain about incidental noise. "How was your day, dear?" she called out, her voice imbued with the genuine concern born of small kindnesses between strangers. "Eventful," I replied, managing a faint smile. "Silas's will was read today." "Oh my," she responded, her brow furrowing with gentle sympathy. "I do hope everything transpired smoothly." If only she knew. As smoothly, I thought, as such proceedings ever could. Inside my apartment, I deposited my satchel on the small dining table, enveloped by the silence that had become my constant companion since the divorce. Not the oppressive silence of solitude, but the serene quietude of someone who had, at long last, grasped the profound distinction between being alone and being abandoned. The sealed envelope rested within my satchel, a silent, ticking time bomb. Silas's neat, familiar handwriting spelled out my name, a script I had known intimately for 32 years. We had met in college, I, the scholarship recipient from rural Louisiana, immersed in civil engineering. He, the business major whose family owned a significant portion of Memphis's commercial real estate. I had fallen in love with his infectious laugh, his insatiable curiosity about how things functioned, his complete unawareness of his own inherited privilege. I had married him despite his wealth, never because of it. The divorce had been surprisingly civilized, almost amicable. 28 years of marriage concluding not in vitriol or betrayal, but in the quiet, mutual recognition that we had evolved into individuals who cherished each other but could no longer coexist. We had remained friends after the papers were signed, awkward at first, then gradually discovering a comfortable distance that allowed for an occasional coffee without the crushing weight of failed expectations stifling our conversation. I brewed myself a cup of Earl Grey tea, the same brand I had favored since graduate school, and settled into my favorite reading chair by the window. The Memphis skyline glittered in the late afternoon light, a vista I had specifically chosen because it consistently reminded me that cities were, at their core, merely scaled-up engineering projects, complex problems solved with concrete and steel, meticulously planned. The envelope yielded easily, revealing 3 pages of Silas's distinctive handwriting, and a smaller, sealed envelope marked open after reading letter. "My dearest Alara," it began, and I could almost hear his voice in every carefully chosen word, the faint southern accent he had never quite shed, despite decades of business school and corporate meetings. "If you are reading this, then I am gone, and you have just endured what I suspect was a rather unpleasant performance from our family, specifically from Serena, who has, I imagine, been rehearsing her victory speech for months, utterly oblivious that she is celebrating a victory in a game she fundamentally misunderstands." I paused, a wry chuckle escaping despite myself. Even from beyond the grave, Silas possessed an almost surgical precision in his assessment of people. "Alara, I need you to comprehend that everything I am about to explain was meticulously planned with mathematical precision, not as an act of revenge. I am not so petty as that. Despite what you might initially perceive as my final gift distribution, this is, in essence, an education. A brutal, undeniably expensive education that our son, Marcus, desperately requires if he is ever to mature into a man, rather than lingering as a well-intentioned but perpetually sheltered scion of wealth." I sipped my tea and continued reading, feeling the familiar cocktail of frustration and admiration Silas had always evoked. He was the only person I had ever known who could, with sufficient artfulness, make even highly questionable decisions appear to be acts of profound wisdom, if one squinted hard enough. "The Key West villas are," Indeed, magnificent, Alara. Absolutely breathtaking. Serena has been driving past them for 2 years, clandestinely photographing them, meticulously planning renovations she could never genuinely afford. What she doesn't know, what none of them know, is that I acquired those properties using heavily leveraged financing specifically to orchestrate this precise moment. My engineering mind immediately began calculating debt-to-value ratios, exorbitant mortgage payments, crippling property taxes on 7 luxury homes, the unvarnished financial realities that Serena would inevitably discover once the celebratory champagne ceased flowing and the harsh light of reality began to intrude. The storage facility, on the other hand. Well, you remember the storage facility. You remember why I purchased it. Even though, at the time, I had dismissed it as a sentimental whim related to my hometown, I remembered. We had been driving through Louisiana on our way to New Orleans for our 10th anniversary when I had, with an engineer's keen eye, noticed the unique geological formations around Shreveport. The distinctive limestone bedrock, the gentle slope of the land towards the river, the mineral deposits that subtly hinted at something immensely valuable lying beneath the surface. I had mentioned it casually, the way engineers often observe nuances that others simply overlook. And Silas, to my surprise, had actually listened. I know you, Alara. I know you are sitting there right now, meticulously calculating mortgage payments and wondering how Marcus will possibly afford 7 Key West villas on his current, modest income. The stark answer is, he cannot. Those properties will irrevocably bankrupt him within 6 months unless he exercises some very astute judgment, and does so with considerable speed. But you, my brilliant ex-wife, you are about to discover that your worthless storage facility sits atop something considerably more valuable than oceanfront vistas and private helipads. I set down the letter, my heart quickening its pace. Silas had always been adept at surprises, but this felt different. This felt like the kind of surprise that possessed the power to fundamentally alter everything. The smaller envelope contained a single, antiquated key and an address I recognized. The law office of Attorney Vivian Harding, a renowned environmental lawyer specializing in subsurface mineral rights and water resources. The very same lawyer I had briefly encountered at a professional conference 5 years prior, back when I was still actively consulting on intricate engineering projects, and she was presenting a seminal paper on groundwater rights in the Mississippi Delta. My phone rang, startling me from my increasingly tumultuous thoughts. Marcus's number appeared on the screen. I briefly considered letting it divert to voicemail, but maternal instinct, even a bruised and battered maternal instinct, compelled me to answer. Mom. His voice sounded strained, far younger than his 40 years. Are you okay? I mean, after today, with the will reading and everything. I'm perfectly fine, darling. How are you navigating your inheritance? That's actually why I'm calling. Serena wants to drive down to Key West tomorrow to meticulously inspect the properties, commence planning renovations, perhaps even engage an interior designer. She's already contacting contractors about installing infinity pools. Infinity pools, I mused, on properties that likely already boasted them, financed with a mountain of debt that would undoubtedly swallow Marcus's savings like quicksand. That sounds ambitious. Mom, I know today was awkward. The way Serena behaved, the things she uttered about your storage facility. She truly didn't intend to be cruel. Yes, she did. Serena had meant every calculated word, every dismissive gesture, every single moment of public humiliation. But Marcus wasn't yet prepared to fully perceive that truth. Son, may I ask you something? Of course. Do you have any precise understanding of how much it costs to meticulously maintain 7 luxury properties in Key West? A prolonged silence on the other end of the line. Then, a hesitant, we'll figure it out. Dad left us the villas free and clear, didn't he? No mortgages. Oh, my sweet, naive boy. Did Mr. Finch make any mention of existing liens or financing? I don't. Serena was handling the majority of the financial minutiae. She's far more adept with that sort of thing than I am. Serena, who had majored in communications, whose idea of meticulous financial planning involved gleefully maxing out credit cards on designer handbags. Serena, who was about to discover that inheriting 7 opulent villas was not, in fact, synonymous with being able to comfortably afford them. Marcus, I want you to do something for me. Before you affix your signature to anything, before you commit to any major decisions regarding those properties, ensure that a qualified accountant thoroughly reviews all the financial obligations. Promise me. Mom, why are you being so paranoid? Dad loved us. He wouldn't have bequeathed us something that would ultimately cause us harm. I looked at Silas's letter, at his precise explanation of brutal education and necessary lessons, and realized, with a pang, that my ex-husband had understood our son far more profoundly than Marcus understood himself. You're absolutely correct, darling. Your father loved you very, very much, more than you currently realize. After we concluded our conversation, I remained in my chair, watching the sunset paint the Memphis sky in hues of orange and purple, my thoughts revolving around dilapidated storage facilities and Key West villas, around the profound distinction between gifts and lessons, around the exorbitant price of truly learning who you are when everything you believed you desired turns out to be far more costly than you can possibly afford. Tomorrow, I would embark on the journey to Louisiana and unlock whatever secrets Silas had meticulously buried beneath 40 acres of Delta soil. Tonight, however, I would mourn not solely my ex-husband, but also the innocence my son was about to irrevocably lose when the harsh hammer of reality finally came calling on his Key West dreams. Some educations, I was learning, were considerably more expensive than others, and some gifts were, in actuality, merely lessons wrapped in prettier paper. 18 months before Silas's death, the call arrived on a Tuesday morning while I was meticulously reviewing blueprints for a state-of-the-art water treatment facility in Baton Rouge. My phone displayed Silas's name, which was, in itself, highly unusual. Our communication typically consisted of toast text messages or brief, purely practical conversations concerning Marcus's birthday gifts or holiday schedules. Alara, do you have a moment to converse? Not over the phone. In person. Something in his voice, a subtle yet profound shift, compelled me to set down my coffee and give him my full, undivided attention. In the 4 years since our divorce, I had heard Silas sound weary, frustrated, occasionally even mildly amused, but never before had I detected this profound hollowness in his tone. Of course. Is everything all right? I need to meet somewhere private, away from Memphis, away from anywhere we might inadvertently encounter people we know. He paused, and I discerned the faint murmur of traffic in the background. What about that small cafe in Shreveport? The one near the old storage facility. The storage facility. We had driven past it countless times over the years, that immense concrete monolith perched on 40 acres of Louisiana Delta farmland, a stark monument to abandoned industry. Silas had acquired it during our marriage, a mere whim, I had thought then, though I had, in fairness, provided the geological survey that had initially convinced him the land possessed latent potential. The Magnolia Cafe, Silas. That's 3 hours from Memphis. I know. Can you meet me there Thursday at 2 o'clock? I agreed, more out of an acute sense of curiosity than genuine concern. Silas had always possessed a flair for the dramatic, a tendency to imbue even the simplest conversations with the gravity of international negotiations. But when I saw him 2 days later, hunched in a secluded corner booth at the quaint small-town cafe, his shoulders curved inward, his usually immaculate appearance subtly disheveled, I realized with a chilling certainty, this was not mere drama. This was unadulterated fear. You look dreadful, I stated, sliding into the booth opposite him, ever the engineer, direct, to the point. He attempted a strained smile that failed to reach the profound sadness in his eyes. Alara, I'm sick. The words hung suspended between us, a stark diagnosis neither of us wished to acknowledge. I scrutinized his face, finally noticing the subtle signs I had inadvertently overlooked during our sporadic coffee meetings, the noticeable weight loss, the profound fatigue etched around his eyes, the almost careful deliberation of his movements, like someone meticulously conserving dwindling energy. How sick? Tardiac. Genetic cardiomyopathy. The doctors estimate I have, perhaps, 2 years. Probably less. He wrapped his hands around his coffee cup as if it were a life raft, an anchor in a turbulent sea. I've known for 6 months. Been trying to figure out how to manage things. Things. Marcus. Serena. The profound mess, he implied, he had inadvertently made of his son's life by providing him with everything, without ever imparting the true cost of anything. I leaned back against the worn vinyl booth, meticulously processing this disquieting information. Silas had always been an intricate planner, someone who thought 5 chess moves ahead in every conceivable situation. If he was divulging his diagnosis to me, it was not because he sought emotional solace. It was because he desperately required something far more practical. What do you want from me, Silas? I want you to help me save our son. He produced a thick manila folder, brimming with documents, bank statements, property records, intricate financial projections that instantly set my engineering mind whirring, calculating ratios and assessing risk. Look at this, he urged, spreading the papers across the table between our coffee cups. Really, look at it. The Key West properties. 7 luxury villas acquired over the past 18 months using financing that made my stomach clench in apprehension. Each villa was undeniably beautiful, breathtakingly expensive, and leveraged to the absolute breaking point. The combined monthly carrying costs, I quickly calculated, exceeded Marcus's annual income by a factor of 3. Silas, what were you thinking? I was thinking about Serena. His voice carried a bitterness I had rarely, if ever, heard from him. Have you truly observed her lately, Alara? Really observed her? I had, at family gatherings, holiday dinners, the infrequent occasions when our post-divorce politeness had necessitated our presence in the same room. Serena moved through Marcus's life like an actress performing a meticulously rehearsed role. The devoted wife, the loving daughter-in-law, the woman who just happened to possess an uncanny awareness of the precise monetary value of every gift, every lavish dinner, every superficial gesture of affection. She doesn't love him, I stated quietly, the truth hanging heavy in the air. She loves the Holloway name. She loves the burgeoning bank account, the elevated social status, the alluring prospect of inheriting wealth she did nothing to earn. Silas's hands were trembling slightly as he meticulously organized the documents. I've been testing her, Alara. Small things at first, casually mentioning fabricated financial setbacks, discussing the necessity of scaling back the business, subtly suggesting we might need to exercise greater fiscal prudence. And she panics every single time. She immediately begins researching my assets online, discreetly questioning Marcus about inheritance timelines, making thinly veiled comments about the critical importance of protecting the family legacy. He looked up at me, his eyes holding a profound pain that far surpassed what his physical diagnosis alone could account for. She's already planning my funeral, Alara. Not because she will genuinely miss me, but because she is meticulously calculating what Marcus will inherit once I am gone. I studied the complex financial documents, employing numbers as a shield to process emotions that felt far too vast and convoluted for mere words. The Key West villas were, I realized, exquisitely crafted traps, designed to appeal directly to Serena's insatiable desire for luxury while simultaneously creating crushing debt obligations that would utterly destroy anyone who lacked the foresight to perceive beyond their shimmering, superficial glamour. You acquired these properties knowing they would ultimately bankrupt Marcus. I acquired them knowing they would unequivocally reveal Serena's true priorities and compel Marcus to make profound choices about the kind of man he truly wishes to become. Silas, that's... I searched desperately for the appropriate word. Cruel. No, Alara. Cruel is allowing our son to remain married to a woman who perceives him solely as a walking trust fund. She immediately begins researching my assets online, discreetly questioning Marcus about inheritance timelines, making thinly veiled comments about the critical importance of protecting the family legacy. He looked up at me, his eyes holding a profound pain that far surpassed what his physical diagnosis alone could account for. She's already planning my funeral, Alara. Not because she will genuinely miss me, but because she is meticulously calculating what Marcus will inherit once I am gone. I studied the complex financial documents, employing numbers as a shield to process emotions that felt far too vast and convoluted for mere words. Cruel is dying quietly and leaving him utterly defenseless against someone who has been systematically isolating him from family and genuine friends, all while positioning herself to inherit everything we meticulously built together. He produced another set of documents, these bearing my own signature from 28 years ago: geological surveys, detailed mineral rights assessments, precise water table analyses. All the intricate technical work I had diligently performed when Silas had, against all apparent logic, insisted on acquiring 40 acres of seemingly worthless Louisiana farmland. You recall this? Of course I recall. You believed I was irrational for discerning potential in empty land. You weren't irrational, Alara. You were right. As always. He spread out updated geological reports, comprehensive environmental impact studies, and corporate contracts that made my breath catch in my throat. That storage facility sits atop one of the purest groundwater sources in the entire Louisiana Delta. I've spent the last year meticulously negotiating subsurface mineral rights and water extraction contracts with 3 major multinational corporations. The figures on the contracts were absolutely staggering: millions in guaranteed annual royalties, with robust escalation clauses designed to incrementally increase payments over time. Clean, perpetually renewable income that would continue flowing for decades. Why are you showing me this? Because I am going to bequeath the storage facility to you. All of it. The land, the building, the subsurface mineral rights, the corporate contracts, everything. I stared at him across the small cafe table, a profound understanding finally dawning. You want Serena to believe she won? You want her to celebrate inheriting 7 villas while I receive the storage facility everyone will perceive as utterly worthless. I want Marcus to learn the stark difference between genuine wealth and crippling debt, between sustainable assets and crippling liabilities, between someone who loves him unconditionally and someone who loves his money. Silas reached across the table and firmly took my hand. And I want you to be there to catch him when he inevitably falls. Alara, you are the only person who has ever truly loved our family without desiring anything in return. You are the only one who will assist Marcus in meticulously rebuilding his life based on fundamental character, rather than fleeting inheritance. His grip tightened. Will you do this? Will you allow me to give you the storage facility, and everything that comes with it? I looked at the contracts, the geological reports, the irrefutable evidence of Silas's elaborate, meticulously crafted plan to educate our son through a controlled financial disaster. It was manipulative, undeniably complex, and quite possibly the most profoundly loving act Silas had ever performed as a father. What if Marcus never forgives me for possessing what he truly needed? Then he is not the man I raised him to be. But Alara, if I know our son, and I do know him, underneath all of Serena's corrosive influence, he will ultimately figure it out. Perhaps not immediately, perhaps not without considerable struggle, but eventually, he will comprehend that sometimes the most profound gift a parent can bestow is the opportunity to truly prove what you are, at your core, truly made of. I agreed that day, sitting in a quaint small cafe in Louisiana, while my ex-husband meticulously planned his final, profound act of love, disguised, for the benefit of all, as betrayal. I affixed my signature to countless documents, made solemn promises, and accepted the daunting responsibility of catching our son when he fell. I just hadn't fully grasped how precipitous that fall would be, or how long it would truly take him to hit rock bottom. But that, I knew, was still months away, on a day when Serena would toast to 7 Key West villas, while I walked away with a storage facility everyone else would scorn as a mere consolation prize. Some legacies, I was learning, were worth waiting for, and some meticulously crafted plans were far too intricate to fully explain until their consequences made their lessons utterly impossible to ignore. 12 months before Silas's death, the geology laboratory at the University of Louisiana looked precisely like every testing facility I had ever worked with during my extensive consulting years. Harsh fluorescent lights, gleaming stainless steel equipment, and that distinctive, almost clinical scent of precision instruments and burgeoning scientific discovery. Dr. Chloe Harrison, the brilliant hydrogeologist I had contacted through my professional network, meticulously spread the water samples and soil cores across the analysis table, like irrefutable evidence in a case that would fundamentally alter everything. Alara, these readings are truly remarkable, she declared, adjusting her glasses as she meticulously reviewed the spectral analysis results. The aquifer beneath your Louisiana property exhibits mineral content and purity levels that rival some of the most intrinsically valuable water sources anywhere in the world. I stood beside her, my engineer's mind diligently processing the profound implications while my heart accelerated with the exhilarating confirmation of what Silas and I had, deep down, always suspected. 12 months before Silas's death, the geology laboratory at the University of Louisiana looked precisely like every testing facility I had ever worked with during my extensive consulting years. Harsh fluorescent lights, gleaming stainless steel equipment, and that distinctive, almost clinical scent of precision instruments and burgeoning scientific discovery. The storage facility property wasn't merely situated on excellent water. It was, in actuality, sitting on liquid gold. What kind of commercial viability are we truly talking about? Premium bottled water, specialized industrial applications, pharmaceutical-grade processing. This aquifer could comfortably support multiple extraction operations simultaneously without any discernible depletion of the source. Dr. Harrison pulled up intricate computer models, vividly displaying flow rates and recharge patterns. Conservatively, you are looking at sustainable extraction rates that would reliably generate millions annually in licensing fees alone. Millions. Silas had been, as usual, absolutely correct. But then, Silas had always possessed an uncanny knack for discerning immense potential where others merely perceived empty land and dilapidated, abandoned buildings. My phone buzzed with an incoming text message from him. Lab results in yet? Meet me at the storage facility at 4 p.m. Time to survey our gold mine. The drive from Baton Rouge to Shreveport led me through a stretch of the Louisiana Delta that most people perceived as an endless expanse of flat farmland, intermittently punctuated by quaint, unassuming small towns that time, it seemed, had largely forgotten. But I had been raised in this very landscape, had learned, over the years, to decipher the subtle signs that invariably indicated valuable resources lying hidden beneath surfaces that appeared utterly unremarkable to casual, uninformed outsiders. Silas was already waiting when I arrived at the storage facility, his sleek black Mercedes looking decidedly incongruous against the rustic, rural backdrop. He had lost even more weight since our cafe meeting, and I noticed he moved with the careful, deliberate grace of someone meticulously managing chronic pain and diligently conserving dwindling energy. Good news or bad news? He inquired, as I exited my Honda. Extraordinary news. Dr. Harrison confirms the aquifer could comfortably support multiple commercial operations. I handed him the lab reports. Silas, this property could reliably generate more annual income than your entire real estate portfolio. Could or will? Will. I've already engaged in preliminary conversations with corporate water divisions at 3 major companies. They are all expressing keen interest in long-term extraction contracts. Silas smiled, the first truly genuine expression of happiness I had seen from him since his devastating diagnosis. Show me. We traversed the property together, I meticulously explaining the complex geological formations that unequivocally indicated optimal groundwater flow, he asking incisive questions with the laser-focused intensity that had propelled him to such immense success in business. The storage facility itself was undeniably massive but, otherwise, utterly unremarkable, a utilitarian concrete structure capable of housing extensive manufacturing operations or vast storage facilities. But beneath our feet lay something infinitely more valuable. The inherent beauty of this, I explained, pausing at a point where the land sloped gently towards a natural depression, is that it's entirely renewable. Unlike the finite extraction of oil or gas, responsible water harvesting actually contributes to the long-term health and vitality of the aquifer. We could reliably generate income from this land for decades, even centuries, without ever depleting the precious resource. We. I caught the subtle pronoun slip. The unconscious reversion to thinking of Silas and myself as an inseparable team, despite 4 years of divorce. You. This is your property, your meticulous plan. No, Alara, this is our plan now. Our son's future. He produced another folder, thick with legal documents. I need you to fully comprehend what I am asking of you. The papers meticulously outlined a complex estate structure designed to transfer complete ownership of the storage facility and all its subsurface mineral rights to me upon Silas's death, while the Key West properties would go directly to Marcus. But the true complexity, the genius of the plan, lay in the intricate corporate contracts, lucrative licensing agreements with Aquapure, HydroCorp, and Zenith Waters, that would commence generating substantial income the very moment extraction operations officially began. You've already meticulously negotiated the corporate deals. I've been diligently working on this for 8 months, Alara. Utilizing shell companies, shrewd environmental lawyers, and highly specialized water rights consultants. The contracts are all signed, sealed, and simply awaiting the formal ownership transfer to activate them. I studied the intricate financial projections, my engineering mind automatically calculating cash flow, operational costs, and long-term sustainability. The numbers were absolutely staggering. Guaranteed annual royalties commencing at $2.3 million, with automatic escalation clauses meticulously built into every contract, designed to incrementally increase payments based on extraction volume and prevailing commodity pricing. Silas, this is. I struggled to articulate words adequate to the sheer scope of what he was revealing to me. This is generational wealth. This could comfortably support Marcus's family for the remainder of their lives. If Marcus learns to value sustainable assets over flashy, ephemeral liabilities. If he genuinely discovers the profound difference between owning wealth and merely inheriting debt. If he ultimately figures out that sometimes the most intrinsically valuable things appear utterly unremarkable on the surface. The plan was becoming progressively clearer, and simultaneously, more brutally effective, as Silas meticulously explained the carefully orchestrated financial education he had painstakingly designed for our son. The Key West properties would systematically drain Marcus's resources, compel him to make excruciatingly difficult decisions about debt and priorities, and unequivocally reveal Serena's true, mercenary motivations when superficial luxury inevitably transformed into a crippling liability instead of an enviable asset. What if he can't handle it? What if the crushing pressure irrevocably destroys him instead of profoundly teaching him? Then I was fundamentally mistaken about the man I painstakingly raised, and you, Alara, will be there to assist him in meticulously rebuilding from whatever fractured remnants remain. Silas gazed out across the 40 acres that would soon become my unexpected inheritance. But Alara, I do not believe I am mistaken. Marcus possesses inherently good instincts, underneath all the corrosive privilege and incessant enabling. He simply requires circumstances that unequivocally force him to utilize them. We spent the entire afternoon traversing the property, Silas meticulously recording a detailed video explanation of his intricate plan using his phone camera. He desired unequivocal documentation, he explained, that would render his true intentions utterly transparent should anyone ever question his mental capacity or his decision-making process. My name is Silas Patrick Holloway, he stated, speaking directly into the camera while standing proudly beside the storage facility. I am 71 years old, in full and complete possession of all my mental faculties, and I am meticulously documenting my estate planning decisions for the ultimate benefit of my family and all legal representatives. He lucidly explained the stark financial reality of the Key West properties, the profound and sustainable wealth unequivocally represented by the Louisiana Aquifer, his deep-seated concerns regarding Marcus's marriage to Serena, and his unwavering faith that eventual, inevitable hardship would reveal true character in every single individual involved. I am bequeathing the storage facility property to my ex-wife, Alara Holloway, because he simply requires circumstances that unequivocally force him to utilize them. We spent the entire afternoon traversing the property, Silas meticulously recording a detailed video explanation of his intricate plan using his phone camera.